Hey everybody, welcome to Willow Talk. My name is Chris Baker. With me as always is
Cameron Suey.
And it's been a couple weeks, I guess, since the last time we did this, hasn't it?
Yeah, we got a nice little break.
Yeah, you know, it's weird. It's like I just, if we seem a little off today, it's probably because we are.
Yeah.
You know, it's just... it's
the laundry list of excuses that we both have is pretty long. For those of you watching on the video, you might be able to tell that I'm not in my closet studio anymore. I'm exiled to an outer room because there is a case of the plague going around my house.
Yes, avoid the plague.
Yes.
And stay healthy.
I'm going to do my best, but hopefully I'll have enough stuff to edit in the meantime.
Let's just start the show and start with news.
I would love that.
What's the news, Cameron?
Well, the news, as always, is there's really no news. I know that Ron Howard was out doing a nice sort of publicity blitz this week, talking about how he would like to be involved as a director for upcoming episodes in a season 2, which is always a nice sign that he's out there on the road. And John Kasdan was being very vocal as well. So
very.
The people who made the show are passionate about it, and they are still continuing to talk about it. And that's news. That's news to me. I care.
Yeah, they're doing what they have to do to, make people who haven't seen it maybe yet start watching it, and to just have the confidence to really put it out there that they want season 2 to happen, and they'll do their best. Do you have any predictions on like what's going to happen in season 2, Cameron? I have a prediction.
My prediction is that I'm going to be optimistic and say that we're going to hear that it gets another season, but it's going to be at least 2 years of production before we see it. So that's my hopeful prediction.
My hopeful prediction is an announcement at Star Wars Celebration in a couple months in London.
That would be lovely, because they do seem to be positioning Willow to be a big Lucasfilm brand.
Right.
That would be a lovely place to do it.
Yeah, I believe the first trailer launched at the last Star Wars Celebration, so it could be they already know. It could very well be they already know. And, I guess on the other side of that, maybe that's the time to announce it's not happening too. I don't know. It's not a very celebratory thing.
I hope that it's the other. And from your lips to the mother's ears, may we get a second season.
Yeah, I'm like 65%. I think it'll happen. There's a healthy 35% that it won't.
I have long ago told myself never to guess odds, because that just invites me looking silly. So I'll just say, I hope.
Han Solo said it so well.
Yes.
So the other thing we always start with,
is
friend theories. My friend Bo, who you might remember from a few episodes ago with his Spawn theory.
Of course I do.
Has returned. He has returned with a post-season theory of what's going to happen the rest of this time. So I'm going to read Bo's fairly extensive theory here.
I'm excited to hear it.
Anyway, here goes. He starts out saying, I'm just going to warn you here. It's like, sounds negative at first, but it's not. His first 2 words are, I hated. I hated the big magic fight in the Willow finale, but I think I understand why. Willow is about the power of community and shared story. It is specifically not about the power of blasting people with light beams. The battle was not very clever. They just blasted away. Compared to the brilliant duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort in the Ministry of Magic, this was more like Rocky versus Clubber Lang. It was dumb. But isn't that the point? Nothing is ever truly resolved by a duel. Dumbledore and Voldemort didn't resolve anything either. That said, 2 significant victories were achieved because of Allura versus Crone. It's funny, Bo writes Allura v. Crone because he's a lawyer.
It also sounds like a Rocky matchup.
Yeah, that said, the 2 significant victories were achieved because Allura versus Crone and Willow leveled up, all of which sets us on the path to a better resolution later. First, Eric chose to come back to the light.
Yes.
He had believed the Crone's lies. Kit invited him back into the fold, and he chose reconciliation. That's big. There's one less apostle to spread the quote-unquote good news of the worm's, quote, better world without rules TM. Victory, Willow. Second, Graydon is isolated. The worm now feeds him the false promise of Allura desiring him romantically. Let's assume he can't resist. Graydon is thus controlled, and he becomes the worm's agent and chief recruiter / propagandist. Victory, Worm. Third, Willow may finally understand that the power to change the world is in his finger. We see that his fake quote-unquote power as a sorcerer seems to have been tied to a magical glowing stone in his staff, but he voluntarily broke the staff and handed the stone to Kit, who handed it to Eric.
Yeah.
Kit used the stone's light in the darkness as a metaphor to invite Eric back into the fold. She told a story about who he is, who they are, and what the future could be. Very Willow of her. She offered the opportunity to be a part of the story. It worked. Willow is finally on the right track here. He started off trying to be a powerful sorcerer, to train Allura to be a powerful sorceress. That was his dubious plan to defeat the worm. Blast harder. Furthermore, Willow was protective and jealous of his power and position. Recall him scolding Gray. "Excuse me, are you the High Aldwin?" Willow was clinging to a false narrative in which he was valuable because of superior magic, but now he seems to have figured it out. Willow's true power comes from who he is and the relationships he has nurtured and the wisdom he can provide, which the group accepts because of those other two things. Willow wins Eric back by empowering Kit to tell the story and offer a chance. This is how the light works. As they walked away from the immemorial city, Willow said that there will be more. I believe he means more allies. Willow plans to hold the darkness and tyranny of the worm at bay by using the story of Allura Danon to offer a choice and unite the various warring factions. I like that Bo spelled Danon like the yogurt. It's D-A-N-A-N, Bo. Come on.
Not for him.
My friend says, if you want to change a person's mind, tell them facts. If you want to change their heart, tell them a story. I like that. Of course, the various peoples can be united in crisis, but it won't last unless Allura can convince them of something deeper than the immediate danger. Thus, Allura will accept the ultimate price in front of everyone, resulting in a new shared story that reinforces a true virtue of self-sacrifice, which can be handed down in perpetuity, and which will keep the people at peace and the worm at bay. She's gonna die. Hashtag thank you, Allura.
Yeah. I have, first of all, I'm not sure if hyperfixation has just broken my brain, and everything sounds awesome to me now, or if that's legitimately truly a fantastic and wonderful theory, because it sounds great. I'm completely on board with that. We talked so much in the last episode about how the worm uses stories to control and to frame. And I think probably the entire premise of the show that I failed to put a nice little finger on is that there are stories from the good side as well. And that those are the things that empower us. And that the entire show has been about finding those collective stories and the power of stories. I think it's not an accident that it opens every week with a book opening up and reading you a story from it. So I love how much that takes the themes of the first season and pushes it into a place that I don't want it to go, but I think seems extremely dramatically potent. I still don't want the prophecies of the worm to be accurate. I still like the idea that the worm lies about that, but maybe that means not that Allura's death is unavoidable, but it's something that she can actively choose at a point where it creates a story that's enough to save the world. Man, Bo, that's beautiful. I love it. I don't want her to die, great. But it's a really lovely way of looking at the next season.
I like it a lot, and I think it's it could just be a synopsis of the rest of the show if they wanted to go that way. However, just going off of the whole Gray Laura, I said Grayola before. Sorry, everybody.
I think you should own it.
Gray Laura. Yeah. We're gonna own Grayola. As I said on Twitter and a podcast you'll hear later. Grayola is for us as dudes who are, we're into the whole Graydon and Allura thing, but it's like, it's just a cool thing for us. And, we might mess up on the intricacies of it sometimes. And there's a lot of color because it rhymes with Grayola. That's us. We're the Grayolas.
The important part is that we're old and we're trying.
Yes. Exactly. But I think the whole Gray Laura thing it seems to be, at least in terms of enthusiastic fandom, driving this so much, and it is largely populated by the Reylo faction, who hated the Rise of Skywalker because, I'm sure multiple reasons, but mostly because Kylo dies.
Yeah,
and they can't. At least as I understand it as an outsider.
I have structural and franchise opinions that I'll probably save for another podcast, but I understand their animus.
And the whole and a huge thing is like they're giving us what we wanted out of that.
Yeah,
we're finally getting that now. And if Allura dies, then they're not really doing that anymore. So
okay, well, let me propose one solution to that for you: is that Allura dying means that she and Graydon are united inside a cleansed magical realm that is no longer perverted by the worm, and they can be together in pure energy form and still be a part of the story. How does that sound?
Okay. Sure.
All right.
Yeah. And they together create the midichlorians. And it turns out this whole thing was the original Star Wars prequel, birthing the Force onto the galaxy.
This is the pre-prequel. Yeah, absolutely. This is the first Jedi. This will end with the construction of the first droid and the first hyperspace ship.
Exactly. I think we figured it out.
Or that's just deeply silly.
We don't even need to show the show anymore. We just figured the whole thing out. We don't really, if there is no season 2, who cares? We just told you exactly what happens.
It was a real easy trip and a fall for us to just start writing fan fiction. Did you notice that? This is what we do now, and I think I'm just going to lean into it. Did you say that we had a question from a viewer?
Oh, yes. We do have a question from a viewer. Peter from YouTube left us a comment. Love the podcast. It's been so fun recapping the episodes with your insightful and cheerful podcast. Thank you, Peter. If you do another audience question section, I'd love to ask a question frequently posed in different fandoms. Which character in the main cast are you most similar to? Cameron.
Yeah.
You go first.
So there was a really cool quiz that somebody sent around on the Twitters recently where you could answer a couple of questions and it would give you who you were. And it's always so difficult in those for me not to tailor my answers to get exactly what I want, because I know who I want to be versus who I think I might be.
It's usually not that hard to figure out.
Yeah. And I tried to be honest in it. In that quiz, that quiz put me as a Borman. And I thought, gee, that sounds right. I'm a little bit grumpy and a little bit snarky, but I really truly care about people and I mean well. But he's also a lot cooler than I am, and I'll probably have to own that a little bit. In all honesty, I think I'm more like Willow, and I mean Willow of the TV show and not of the original movie. I'm a dad. I've got some reservations about people taking over. I am grumpy and I want to do it my way, and everybody is not listening to me, and that's frustrating. So I think the answer is that I'm a Willow. And I am coming to grips with the idea that this isn't my story, and I'm here to facilitate other people's story as I move forward in my life. So I think that's what I'll go with. I am happily a grouchy Willow.
Yeah, well, that last part was pretty Borman of you there. The last thing he said. That's almost exactly what he says in the last episode.
Again, not that cool.
Fair enough. For me, I guess I gotta go Graydon. That's who I got in the quiz. And, I am kind of the writer type like he is, and I like to learn things. And, I probably would not be too excited about going into battle on a quest. Perhaps I would discover my magic in a source of desperation. I don't have a flute, though.
You got to find your instrument. I was going to say Graydon for you as well. I think of you as somebody who has also an enthusiastic and encyclopedic knowledge of a lot of things.
I don't know how helpful like knowing Star Wars and Marvel would be really on a quest.
Well, he didn't know how helpful Narcotic was going to be until
retro video games. That's all my jam. I don't know how useful that would be, but maybe. I also would say. I have a few, like, they're not huge, but a few like little scars on my chest from acne as a teenager, and that's its own form of possession, I guess, so I got that similarity. I also like to bully Peter Parker.
Okay, see, it all lines up at this point.
So I guess I gotta go Graydon.
All right. Thank you for the question. I appreciate answering silly questions. I enjoy that. Well, without further ado, are we ready to jump into talking about Willow Behind the Magic?
We shall. And first of all, I have no idea if this was intentional or not because it makes sense as is, but do you recognize that title from something else in the Lucasfilm family of products?
No, I do not.
Well, allow me to shame you, former LucasArts employee, because there is an basically an interactive encyclopedia before we had Wikipedia and that kind of thing. In 1998, I think it was, LucasArts released something called Star Wars Behind the Magic, which was an interactive encyclopedia. It had some little mini games and stuff in it too. It was the first time I think that the footage of Luke, like at the very, very beginning of Star Wars that's cut, was ever shown.
Yes.
It's got, several hidden things, and it was really slickly presented and funny at times too, and I really loved it. And now you don't need that because of Wikipedia and whatnot,
the internet. Yeah,
exactly. But in its day, it was like, man, why can't I have like a DC Comics and Marvel Comics version of this? And it was really wonderful. They did an episode 1 version as well, which I think is called Inside the Magic or something. It's something similar.
Were you working at LucasArts when the first?
Oh God, no. I was pre-industry at that point. I think I was writing maybe some freelance reviews for a website, and that would have been technically in the video game industry, I guess. But,
right. I know you predate me there by a bit, but I also remember seeing copies of Behind the Magic lying around in corners and on desks all the time, along with copies of Yoda stories.
It's worth a look. If you happen, if you can even have a PC that runs it. I wonder. There's probably some YouTube videos out there that give you a walkthrough of it. But yeah, so Behind the Magic has a legacy that I think Pablo Hidalgo would know about. So maybe he informed that. I should just ask him. We're friends on Twitter. I could just...
Yeah, go for it.
Anyway, so that immediately made this a fun thing for me. And did you watch the trailer for it when they put that up a week or so ago?
I actually have stuck to my guns about not watching trailers, and I think it is probably something I'm going to take with me into my future media existence.
A trailer, it's more like a commercial is what it was. But it really hammered home the we're not going to make this a purely serious documentary of it all. And it alone had me laughing quite a bit. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of the funny things.
To jump ahead, it ended up being sort of half documentary and half mockumentary.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, I guess if that was shown in the trailer, that it caught me by surprise. Maybe surprise isn't the right word. It seems very in keeping with Warwick Davis's sense of humor. So it was, it was a pleasant delight to find.
Yeah, I think we should just go totally freestyle here in terms of how we talk about this. Like, speaking to that, my wife watched this with me. She only tuned in for the first couple episodes just because of, our schedules and whatnot, like TV watching schedules and what we're interested in. But she watched this, and there are a couple of like semi-spoilery parts. But I think like if you want to get somebody interested in Willow, show them this first. It's not that spoiler heavy. It really sets the tone for what the show is, maybe too well.
Now that I think about it, you might be exactly right. I don't think there's any real story beats that are shown in there, or at least with any context.
Yeah, it shows like some climactic stuff from Nockmaar that was in the trailers too. So it's not like it was a total surprise or whatever.
I will say that I felt like I would have liked to have seen a heck of a lot more actual technical behind the scenes stuff, and that might just be what I am interested in, particularly. But that wouldn't have been interesting to someone who had never seen the show before. And you're right. This not only sets the tone of the show, but it introduces the sort of vibe and aesthetic of joyous silliness and not taking itself too seriously. This might be the perfect trailer for the show, actually.
And I would say camaraderie as well, because you really get the impression in this show that everybody really likes each other.
Yeah.
And, that they are a sextet plus Willow, I guess you would say.
Yeah, yes. Well, and that's another thing that having seen the whole series, I guess I would have liked to have known how people genuinely thought about Warwick Davis. I think the character of Warwick Davis, the actor that they've created for this, is really a delight. It sort of trends towards that Ricky Gervais style of humor that
Oh, absolutely.
I've kind of grown out of because I'm uncomfortable about who's the butt of the joke and what the overall intent is. But I think they sort of deftly avoid that by making it feel like it has a genuine arc at the end. That, for all of this, the character Warwick Davis's foibles, he ends up very much like the character Willow in the show, grouchily passing on the torch when the time is right.
He's totally making fun of himself. It's not like Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes or something.
As someone who used to love Ricky Gervais's comedy a lot, I think there's distinctly a time when his self-effacing comedy was something I enjoyed a lot. But I think you're right. I think maybe his britches are large and he is no longer the target of his own jokes anymore. And that may be the part that I am uncomfortable with. But Warwick is very happy to make himself, an oversized character here.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. Actually, they kind of set the whole thing up by showing us movie stuff. Taking us back to 1987 on the set of Tira's Lean with Ron Howard in a Star Tours cap, because that was the hot new ride at Disneyland.
And there was two interesting things for me about that is that, one, it made me realize that I don't really know how much Ron Howard was involved with this production. He's, is in this documentary, and I guess I hadn't thought about his involvement. The other one is that, at some point, Ruby Cruz, the actress who plays Kit, says that the original movie doesn't take itself too seriously. And then they cut right to Willow riding a sled over a cliff. And one of the things that I thought was odd in some of the negative reactions is that a lot of older fans of the movie are like, the original movie was a serious, grimdark fantasy, and this new one is just so silly and goofy. And it's nice that they knew what movie they were making. Even if some of us have forgotten what movie it was.
Yeah, someone on Reddit actually did use the word grimdark, which, really?
Nope. Nope. Words have meanings.
Did you see it once?
Nope.
With bad sound it's like, how do you get that out of your mother was a lizard?
The tiny man gave a love potion to a cat and then fell into a giant beer.
Beer!
It's not grimdark. I love seeing the map at the beginning, because they tweeted this map a little bit earlier and then quickly withdrew it. But I do feel like this is our canonical confirmation that at least this part of Willow World is called Anduin, because it's listed right there on the map. That might be the name of the realm.
Yeah. What is Anduin? Yeah, we still don't really know what Anduin means.
But Anduin has crossed over from joke into point of fact for Willow. And I kind of love that. That's wonderful.
It looks like it's about the size of Europe, if that. Or Western Europe even, or, half the United States. It doesn't really look that big as a location, which makes me think it's part of a much larger world that maybe they don't even know about.
And I think it's very wise to keep it unsaid at this point. There are lots of things that aren't on the map. Kashmir is not on the map. So it's not a complete map of the world by any means. And I think, in the same sense of when you're building a role-playing game campaign, you don't need to do the entire map of the world. In fact, that sort of cuts you off and prevents you from creativity earlier. That's one of the things that I loved early on about them saying that the Shattered Sea was at the edge of the maps where maps end, is because if you have incomplete maps, you have possibility.
I did go back and look at the previous map that was generated from the movie, and there are some discrepancies.
Yeah.
Shall we say.
Sizable.
Including, I read a portion of the novelization a few episodes back, and it doesn't line up with that at all.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see an official, kind of tagging of where everything, not only in the TV show happened, but also the movie.
Yeah.
To see if they can find a way to make them actually line up. Because it really, if you think about this map in terms of the movie, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess the way it would make the most sense is if Willow and the Nelwyns moved a long way away from where they were.
But it seems like they're in the same village, because the ruins of their village are above ground, right? And that they're
in the show, it does, yeah. But I'm just talking in terms of making this map make sense. It straight up doesn't.
I am all here for an enormous retcon. I am completely fine with them remixing the world on the fly.
Oh, sure. I would like it to make sense as one cohesive work, though. Like, can you make that movie fit on this particular map?
That's a puzzle and a challenge, yeah.
That is my challenge.
That's,
I don't know. I would happily take that challenge up.
I was going to say, if someone wants to hire my meager cartography skills, I would love to.
I recently tweeted out on a Willow podcast, our Twitter account, the map of Willow's world per Nintendo Power in the NES game. Yeah, that is not official.
Presaging our upcoming expose on the hit NES game.
I have promised via Twitter, without your consent, Cameron, the most thorough breakdown of the Nintendo NES game ever recorded. I think we could do it.
I'm taking detailed notes.
We also have to beat a very great retro gaming podcast called Retronauts, which as of right now I've been invited to do in the nearish future. The date got pushed back, so I don't know when that is, but our episode would be distinct from that one.
Oh, of course.
I somehow have to make it better.
Yep. Listen. You have my permission to go forth and podcast as you will. I know it'll be good. I really loved... I sort of lamented not getting some behind the scenes technical stuff, but there's a couple of great things that we get just in passing. One of them is confirmation that they did use the volume, the Mandalorian, LED sphere for some of the scenes, especially in episode 7, The Shattered Sea. And they, in fact, at one point have a quick wipe of what it looked like on the volume before the special effects go. And there's like light bars all on the sand so that as the magic goes, it's actually casting real light on the actors' faces. And that was something I loved seeing, was how much they used on-set lighting as opposed to after effects or post-production.
These Lucasfilm people, they know what they're doing with special effects somehow.
I'm forced to admit that that's true.
Hey, I just remembered I have a weekly wince.
Ooh, let's hit it.
That it relates to Anduin. Now that we know that Anduin is the official title. Side note, just a reminder, something I've said at least once, maybe twice on the show before. The word Anduin is from an April Fool's joke in 2006 by Pablo Hidalgo, and that has stuck around as the official name, and that's hilarious to me.
Congratulations.
But, I think those of us who continue to enjoy Willow and enjoy the show are we get it. We're winners. We're winners. Whereas those who would seek to destroy this wonderful creation of John Kasdan and his illustrious crew are the Ando-losers of the world.
I don't think it's going to supplant Questies as the new appellation for Willow fans. But you caught me off guard, and I sure as heck laughed. I will happily be both a Questie and a winner.
I'm not saying that's the name. I'm just saying we are that. It's like it's not like a title or whatever. It's just you're a good person, basically.
I still intend to liberally say Willow World whenever I can, but Anduin, yes, is carved into the book of lore. There's a couple of shots where they show some use of VFX to sweeten scenes that they shot on location. And it made me realize that there's a lot of scenes in the show that I did not realize were VFX. Specifically the cliff where they extended it up and down to look much taller.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, but what I think is stunning about it is that the final result, and like I kept talking about during the show, it doesn't look like an over-the-top, sort of super magical cliff. It's just sort of hyper real. It still feels grounded, and because most of it was shot on a real location, it's not entirely a CG cliff. And I loved how much shooting on location made the use of VFX feel almost invisible. I love editing, and I used to think that sort of the best editing is invisible when you don't notice it at all. And I think with VFX, that's almost absolutely the case. Is that if you don't realize it's VFX, that's the best possible outcome. And some of these sort of landscape VFXs were just gorgeous. And
I will say there's like a snarky part of me that's like, oh, I can see that part right now. That's great.
Yeah, learning how the sausage is made is kind of poisonous for everybody sometimes. But But they also highlighted some of the original matte paintings from the original Willow, specifically that set in Nockmaar, that they actually rebuilt from a matte painting that I didn't realize was a matte painting. I know that one of the great benefits of working at the Lucas campus was walking by incredible classic matte paintings every day. But I didn't realize that one in particular in Nockmaar was so little of it was real.
Okay, I gotta say, I never saw anything from Willow on the walls. I saw something once that I thought was Willow, and I wonder if you're thinking of the same thing that I was.
So and again, the poison of memory and the Mandela effect is I'm going to make up everything right now. But I feel like there is the matte painting of the high mountains in the Nelwyn village that's extended on.
Okay.
But I might be making that up entirely. I know there's tons of matte paintings in there, but I don't know that there are actually any from Willow.
There's a dark castle. I don't know if you remember the dark castle. That is a matte painting in the Letterman Digital Art Center in San Francisco in the Presidio. For those who don't know, this is where Lucasfilm is headquartered now. Is where we worked when we were at LucasArts, and they have all ILM stuff on the walls. You got like Vigo from Ghostbusters 2, like that painting is on the walls, and the clouds from Hook. Everyone's favorite. But yeah, there's this one like tall, dark castle pretty close to where my office was in the PR department. And I thought it was Nockmaar Castle for a while until I watched Ewoks: The Battle for Endor.
Oh no. Okay, now I know exactly what castle it is. Yes, yeah.
And that was the castle of the bad guys in that. Or maybe it was the Caravan of Courage. I think it was Battle for Endor, but one of those.
We still have some spies inside that building. Maybe I will ask one of them to politely walk around and take some photographs.
They're growing fewer by the day.
Yes, yeah. It's... another thing about production that I love seeing was the full-size mock-ups of Kenneth, the Mudmander.
Oh gosh, yes.
I think it was so wise to just have the head because it focused so much of the emotion on the face, and it really kept it as a very sort of grounded performance. But it was really fun to see that he would have had 6 little legs running very quick underneath the water in the mud. It's a great mock-up.
It's just a beautiful Muppet.
Yeah,
I guess it's not Jim Henson, is it? So it's not technically a...
I mean, it feels like Jim Henson. That's the wonderful thing about it.
Yeah, totally. But talking about minor characters that we loved, I also loved seeing the Silas actor in an Atari shirt.
Yeah,
that was very cool.
Yes, looking very cool and chill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of the sort of nature of this documentary is it bounces back and forth to the fake Willow story and actual behind the scenes stuff. There's some stuff that just sort of, happens really quickly and is not connected to the larger part of it. But one of the things that I loved was that they talked about the background artists and hair and makeup and costumes and how their focus on inclusion and diversity and having people be able to see themselves reflected on screen extended even to the background artists and to everybody you saw in Tira's Lean and in those visions. And I think that's really fascinating to see how that was a holistic intent on set from top to bottom and not just a few casting choices and then call it a day. It was really a cast and crew wide decision. So it was really charming to see.
Yeah, you could tell just everybody was totally into the job and having a great time.
Yeah, every single scene is just the joyousness of it just leaps off the screen.
Yeah, and what was the quote? We tried to steer clear of medieval architecture. We're not in Europe, and we're not even in medieval times. We are our own fantasy world. That's Christian Milstead, production designer. That's one that I wrote down.
Yes, and
which is what we've been saying all along.
And he also brings that up as a point of why they didn't use classical castles and European ruins as their sets. Something I didn't even realize was a choice until he mentioned it. And that's another reason why this felt so distinctly different from other fantasies, is that they were even eschewing those sort of classical symbols of medieval Europe. And yes, it's so great to hear the cast and crew say it over and over and over again. This is fantasy. We can do whatever we want. And I think that's the correct and proper way of approaching fantasy.
Yeah, and I hope the whatever Wales tourism industry is out there just takes the 2 minutes of them talking about whales, where they say,
holy cow,
within 1 hour of Cardiff, you can shoot on beaches, in forests, by lakes, up valleys, up mountains. That makes me want to go to Cardiff.
Yeah, that makes me want to actually look up my Welsh relatives and see if I could have a place to stay.
I have been to Iceland, which is very much the same way, and I highly recommend going there. It's like a Star Wars planet every 50 miles is how I put it when I was there.
Lord of the Rings has already put New Zealand on my bucket list, so
Yes,
what, I'm just going to add Wales to it as well.
Well,
Let's
the original Willow was like half New Zealand, half Wales.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now I got to go both. It'll be a double trip.
They were doing New Zealand before it was cool.
One of the things that I realized from this is that the actors primarily did their own stunts, and that what they were choreographing was basically to the limits of what the actors could do, and how they worked with them in sort of making sure that they were being used to the best of their ability and not being pushed too far, which I think was really cool, because stunt work is something I'm really impressed by, but
yeah,
to have those cast members being able to do their own stunts, I think probably lent some realism and some intensity to their performances. And it was cool to hear that was a choice that they made.
Yeah, I don't know why I was particularly impressed by Ruby Cruz, but just the way she moved about and handled her weapons, I thought stood above the rest, which were also great. I don't know. It just did to me.
I love that they all learned how to sword fight genuinely.
Yeah, and she was just so happy to learn how. Maybe that's why it really stuck out to me. She seemed so happy about it, and I would be too.
I would be very happy to learn how to sword fight.
If I got paid to learn how to sword fight for a month, I mean, that's pretty great.
In some of those behind the scenes scenes, we saw the actor who played the Dag is actually a very sort of young. I assume she might be a dancer to achieve some of those, physical poses that she contorted herself into. But it was really cool to see her working with the cast and crew as well. Christian Slater seems like the most positive guy in the world. Like, he came in for one episode and he's such a booster about the whole cast and crew. And he was so game to play along with the Willow mockumentary where Warwick Davis accuses him of stealing the idea for Pump Up the Volume.
So good. So good.
Such a good, silly joke. I have a distinct love of the very British threat where he tells Christian Slater to barrister up. Just a lovely little bit of silliness that they put together.
I just love the Warwick's name for it was, "Would you mind turning up the music, please?"
Yes. And that he calls Pump Up the Volume rather rude. Yeah, he just... the playfulness which they even approached, what could have been a boring making-of documentary and a contractual obligation, they made a silly joke out of it. And you might have noticed that I'm fond of the idea of telling a little joke in the margins of something. And, I lamented not seeing true behind-the-scenes stuff with Warwick, but I think it was genuinely lovely that the story of him cracking Ellie's wands in half on set and not ever fully accepting her. Yes. Yeah. The grainy security footage of Warwick Davis destroying props. But it mirrors the plot of the show in a really nice way. Like, it's thematically appropriate.
Like when he's doing that, that photo shoot.
Oh, God.
Ellie's not there.
He's such a ham of course, in the best way.
Warwick takes it upon himself to do everything. Makeup, transportation, medic. Saved Aaron Kellyman from choking on a chicken bone, I think it was.
That's exact, choking on chicken bone. I love at some point where he's talking about how he was on fire after Willow's. At one point he describes something as between Willows. Which is a sweet bit of self-delusion.
Yeah, and of course he had all those mock-ups of the Willow movies, which I looked a little bit more closely at, and it's not only mock-ups. They went all out with these things, because like if you look at the bottom, it's got like fake names. Like, so I'm looking at Willow Lost in New York right now, which of course is reminiscent of Home Alone 2. There is the New York newspaper that Willow is reading with the headline, Babmorda escapes, seen lurking around NYC. So there's your plot. There's all these things on the back. You see a picture of General Kale, a picture of Mad Mardigan. Mad Mardigan's mini storage is an ad on the back. And, they have like the credits at the bottom, and every single one of them has like obviously fake names. This is Quivering Spaniel presents Willow, Lost in New York, a film by Seth Baker, no relation to me, written by Wanda Fireball, Davin Gruesome, Donk Farkle, Maya Papaya, Jasper Rascal, Flip Skippy. I wonder if there's like any inside jokes in some of these names, because like there's 4 of these and they all have like different ones down there.
Just like the television show, like they took... they confidently and sillily went all the way in on a joke.
Tandar Pictures. That's got to mean something.
Somebody had a blast with those, and I'm so glad they did.
Okay, this is hilarious to me. With amongst all these fake names in Willow's colon, a magical medical adventure. It reads
about gastrointestinal health.
Written and directed by Warwick Davis, with a special appearance by Val Kilmer. And then it's just a bunch of fake names. So, you got to wonder what Val Kilmer's role in Willow's colon would have been.
I think I'm going to keep wondering on that one.
Yeah.
So I had never seen John Kasdan interviewed before this. So it was, again, it's great to see that not only is he confident the world that he's making, but he gets along with everybody on set just like they get along with each other. He has that same relationship. He has that same sort of goofy and playful relationship with each of them. It's amazing how much that comes out in the show. How much they care about each other and they care about each other's visions. And they also, Christian Slater talks about how John really let everybody be free and express themselves. And I think, other creators might be more controlling and more, defined about what things are. But every character, has something that comes uniquely from the actors. And now knowing that he let them have that, so much leeway and freedom to develop those things, it really shows. It doesn't feel like the work of one voice. It feels like a collective story.
Yeah, we certainly got the, a good feel of how he ran things. But also, he had some good one-liners there too. Like, when he's explaining to Ellie, which it just occurred to me, Ellie could also mean Allura. It's like a roll of destiny for her, right? Call Allura Ellie and get away with it.
I was mostly taken aback by how much of an English accent she has and how flawless her American accent was.
I would have been fine with her using the English accent too. I don't know why they made her Americanize it, but that's how it is in Willow World.
Exactly.
But yeah, so Kasdan says to Ellie, I think maybe he got the idea that I wanted to call the show Allura Dannon. And, that was a funny, delivery that he had. But it also, it goes back to something I said a long time ago, in episode 2 or 3, the show is called Willow. So I think it's really going to be about Willow at the end of the day. But you know what? I really think they could have called it Allura and maybe avoided some of the negativity in that it's clearly a younger character's show.
Yeah.
It's just as much about Kit, I would say, too. But
purely from a branding and PR and business decision.
But, I was saying, and they say, Willow doesn't really have that much not brand recognition. I mean, yeah, partly brand recognition, but prominence, I guess.
Yeah.
If they called it Allura, because Willow, this show is new to so many people watching it. They haven't even seen the movie.
Yeah.
If it had just been Allura, the movie fans would know that it is a Willow show, but they might go in with maybe expectations that it's geared at a younger audience.
I think a bit about these novels that were released in the 90s that did not say Willow on them, and how I saw them on the shelf as a kid and did not even know that they were related to Willow. I totally understand why they would want to sort of keep the franchise and the brand recognition. And I guess it doesn't bother me too much, but I have a solution. What if it had been called Willow, Elora Danan?
Oh.
Would that have killed both birds with a single stone?
I think you need, like, something catchier than a name, but, like, Willow Elora's Journey or something like that. You know, maybe that.
We should learn from the master and use the colon.
Maybe they're going to do that next season.
Well, I mean, now that they've established it, I genuinely think it's a wide enough world that they could make other shows or properties or stories that don't necessarily have to be called Willow. But it makes sense to me that this one was called Willow, and it still is sort of a collective group story.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved seeing the Wildwood set, because something I learned about it was that it was a mine and a cave system that had collapsed in on itself, and then has regrown as a forest around it, which is, again, if I ever go to Wales, that'll be sort of first on the list of places I'd like to go, because it has a fascinating, very natural look to it that I sort of assumed was the result of a whole lot of set building, but they really were able to just use the natural structures that were there with just a few accoutrements, and I thought that was a really lovely use of the space.
Yeah, even that place in that same episode at the beginning of the episode where they're escaping the gales, and that's like actual ruins that they added to.
Yeah. And
it's probably that's what they show when they say they didn't want to get anything too medieval, but that's maybe a little as medieval as they get.
But it still is not sort of your classical castle and battlements. It is a very different sort of architectural style.
Even, just like, there's just some cool imagery in general, like the very beginning montage, you see like the magic training with the without any special effects, and then just transitions seamlessly with the special effects, and you get a good idea of what post-production does in 2 seconds, right?
A whole lot, yeah. I again could have watched an hour just on the post-production stuff, but I understand. There's
also a part where we see the smithing, I guess you'd say, of Kale's sword and Sorsha's sword, which are my 2 favorite swords and all of Willowish stuff.
Smithing seems to be a creative use of the word, because it looks like they were probably made out of some sort of plastic or rubber in a mold.
Okay, yeah, it is a creative... plastic smiths, or I don't know.
But yeah, I love to see that the physical objects that could created for a show like this. When they were talking about Wales and how beautiful the environment is, one of the things they mentioned is because we're making a road movie, and I guess at that point I hadn't thought about Willow as a road movie until that point, but it absolutely is a road movie. It's just a constant driving, movement towards a goal. Yeah. So I like that vibe. I would be very much up for more the gang goes on a road trip vibes and stories for episode or season 2.
And if you think about like Lord of the Rings, right? The Fellowship of the Ring is that.
Yeah.
And then the next 2 movies are only kind of that.
Yeah, everybody splits up.
Yeah. So I wonder if they could do something similar, because I feel like it is going to be more targeted and not as much of a quest along different places to go. It would be going to the lair of the worm or whatever. However they resolve this whole situation. Graydon leading the forces against Tirzleen, or reclaiming Nockmar.
I think by necessity they'll have to break up the story into breaking up the party and not having everybody in the same thing. But I did genuinely love how much they stuck to that in the first season of having it be a road trip.
Yeah.
I loved hearing Umar and Aaron talk about representation and how much it means to Aaron as a queer woman to play a queer character on Disney. I know we talked a little bit before that about how much I liked how it was presented simply as a matter of fact naturalness. But I also loved hearing her say it very specifically. This is a queer character on television, on a Disney show, and what that means to her and what that matters, and how much that
Ruby
matters.
Was particularly excited about that as well.
Yeah. I think a lot too when my first daughter was born about 10 years ago, and I was so excited that the media that she had access to had people that looked like her in it, which is to say white young women, and how that felt like a step forward to me, where when I grew up, it was entirely, white men characters, and how much that meant to her to see herself reflected 10 years ago. And it's unfortunate that it's still a process because obviously the media we make should reflect the actuality of who we are and what we look like. But it is awesome and triumphant to hear how much that was intentional on this show to give everybody a chance to see themselves as a heroic character.
Did you catch Amir's, while we're talking about the woke section of this stuff, did you catch Amir's shirt?
I loved that shirt, yes.
I didn't at first. My wife pointed it out to me. I was like, oh, yeah, that's
I follow Amir on Twitter, and what I genuinely love about him is that he has strong opinions, and he is not afraid to share them.
Yeah, for those who didn't catch it, it is a Venn diagram with a huge circle that says loud white men, and then a smaller circle that says opinions that matter, and they just intersect ever so slightly.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Ever so slightly.
But it's so great to hear how much of that was the intent from the beginning, and then how much it felt natural and not like a deliberate statement made by someone who wants to feel proud of what they did. It just felt like a natural use of great talent and the way we should be trending in media. And it was just lovely.
Yeah, it was great. And Amir's my favorite character in the show. I love, he totally brought back, maybe even surpassed Val Kilmer in terms of like being the fun guy.
Yeah.
It's tough to say.
He had 8 hours. He had more time than Val, yeah. But he is making a college try of knocking Val off the throne there. I think you might be right.
Yeah, it's which, is good. It's good for new things to be better than old things. I still don't know that I would say the show is better than the movie, just because the movie holds such a special place in my heart. And but I still love both in different ways, and in the same ways in some ways. That's a very confusing statement I just made, but it still makes sense to me.
Let's take a brief word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Willow Talk is brought to you by the Friends of the Packlecade, reminding you that some nightly orders still benefit from an economy formerly based in slavery, but not Tirazline.
And we are back. Chris, is there anything else that you wanted to mention about the Behind the Magic documentary?
I'm trying to think, and no, I think we covered.
Yeah,
we covered this integral part of the Willow experience. No, I would just say overall, like, it's the funniest thing I've seen on TV in a long time. And I would reiterate that if you want to get someone interested in Willow, this is like a 30-minute thing to show them, and it really captures the tone. They might realize Christian Slater's in it when they didn't before, and that might entice them. So yeah,
I think if you're interested in seeing behind the scenes clips at all, and you enjoyed the show, there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't watch this. And I think even if you are just maybe a Warwick Davis fan and haven't kept up on the show at all, that this still would be something that I would suggest to people who enjoy, that particular style of British comedy and mockumentary.
Yeah, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to point out is that at the end, when Warwick is extolling his virtues, he refers to himself as the king of the Ewoks, which just made me lose it.
Oh, I love when he lists everybody's name and it's something completely wrong.
He has a specific sort of character of Warwick Davis that he loves to play. Yeah. When they showed how great his work ethic was and how he was working on all of the sets and building props himself, I loved seeing them make the Mudmander's silt sleigh, because they were doing specific techniques to make it look weathered and aged. And when I have time, one of my hobbies is painting little tiny model figurines. And one of my absolute favorite things to do is doing, weathering and damage and paint that looks like it's been chipped. So it's really cool to see that done on a very large scale with those tools. I got really excited by that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's a hobby I've always admired, but it's just too much for me, I think.
Chris, can we do some shout outs before we go?
Shout away.
We got a lovely new review on iTunes from Panama Kratsis. Forget the bird, follow Willow Talk. I love this podcast. I'm an aspiring writer and a host of a creative writing podcast of my own, Determination, Deliberation, and Dragons. The link to that will be in the show notes. Listening to Willow Talk has been a great way to learn more about the art of storytelling through this TV show that I enjoyed very much. Chris and Cameron have already given me so much to think about with regards to the Willow show, and while I already loved the characters in the story, the podcast has only deepened my appreciation of them. Thank you so much for your insights and your positivity. It is a joy listening to the show. Thank you so much. I'm going to put a link to your show in the show notes, and as a writer of creative things, I'll be very interested to check that out. And thank you so much.
As will I. And I didn't realize we were, I don't know, it sounds almost like we're teaching people things. I don't feel like that's what we're here or what we're doing, but if that's an inadvertent side effect of this, then great.
Perhaps we should put a disclaimer at the front of the show before we get in any trouble, because we certainly don't mean to be teaching anybody anything.
Speak for yourself.
Did you have any comments that you wanted to read from your side of the channels?
Yeah, we got some more YouTube. Like, I think last episode was we had 12 comments, or 6, because I always respond. And,
hello to all our folks on YouTube.
But yeah, some people we heard from before, like Tilly Street. Great to hear back from Tilly. Smiley Ray says, I love the Willow series beginning to end. I hope there are more seasons.
Me too.
I assume that means they like us. I don't know. There was no comment.
Well, if not, we're sorry.
Nicholas Carr, I thought, had a pretty cool thing to say. Nicholas Carr says, I really enjoyed listening to you every week after each episode dropped. I loved watching Willow as a child, so I was happy to find people who are optimistic about the show instead of providing negative reviews. I wanted to add another Star Wars reference for episode 8, so he's got some added stuff for us here.
I'm excited.
He's a big Star Wars fan, as are we all. When Willow is talking to Graydon before Graydon jumps, their conversation in tone and language feels similar to Obi-Wan talking to Anakin for the first time as friends in Revenge of the Sith. You are strong and wise, and I am very proud of you, Anakin. Yeah, it does sound similar. Especially given the ending with Graydon seemingly turning to the dark side. Keep up the good work. I look forward to continuing to listen to your content. Thanks. Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Hopefully you're there to hear this.
Yeah.
Then Henry Yee says, great, insightful podcasts that matched my joy of watching and revisiting Willow. Thank you. You are welcome, Henry. And we did Peter earlier. He's the one who gave us the question.
Hello again.
And finally, Jez Hunt is an interesting one. She says, cheers, lads. I've enjoyed all of these. Been good seeing your views on it. I really enjoyed the series, but I'm a bit biased. I was a leather worker in the costume department. So it's nice hearing more balanced, but generally positive opinions. Looking forward to anything else you fellas post.
That is awesome. And thank you so much. I love to hear when people who were affiliated with the show don't think we sound ridiculous. Yeah, so I really appreciate that.
They come from everywhere, really. We've had the thing we did recently about the Willow, the line that the crone says are lining up with the teaser trailer that came from Xander, who is a composer on the show. Like half the music you heard was his,
and we are indebted to that. Yeah. I will say that if you were inventing a cool sounding action hero, you couldn't do much better than leatherworker Jez Hunt. Like that's
pretty good.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Shout out, Jez. Thank you.
So yeah, that's thank you everyone for the kind words. We really appreciate it.
As far as future episodes go, next week, as long threatened and promised, we do have a special guest. And we'll let that be a surprise when the episode drops. But we do intend to make a few more of these. I know we're going to discuss the Willow NES game, as well as Chris Claremont's Shadow Moon novel, as well as doing a final episode where we wrap up the show and then potentially maybe have some other guests. But we'll see how that develops. So keep your ear open. We will constantly be updating the feeds and let you know as things come. But we've got a few more fun things in the pipeline coming down.
And if you want a spoiler as to who that special guest is, because I totally said it on a podcast I guested on recently, Video Game Apocalypse, which I did way back when we started the show. Nothing on it about Willow, though I do talk about the show a little bit. Video Game Apocalypse.
If you want to Sherlock out our special guest, I will provide the links for that in the show notes.
There you go.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris. And Phil, would you like to take it away and do our outro for us?
Cameron, it would be my pleasure. Listeners, Sorry, which episode is this? So sorry, everyone. I appear to be a little confused. Do I tell you to ignore the bird on this one? Okay, ignore the bird. All right then. Does Cameron still say bye y'all after these? Is that bye y'all? Bye y'all. It's one of those. Is that? Can anyone tell me how long specifically have I been wearing these clothes?
All right, I guess I'll start now.
Doom, ba, bum, 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 ba, bum, bum.